All right, Jeff. So this week we have a good friend of mine, O'Hara Howard here. He's a wholesaler. And how long you been in the business, O'Hara?
Since full-time since '01, so 18 years.
Wow. Man, that's a long time, O'Hara.
Yeah.
You look about 80, so you started late in life.
Welcome to the Independent Dealer Podcast, the podcast for auto dealers to learn and grow together. Here are your hosts, Luke Godwin and Jeff Watson.
Oh, man. So, Jeff, this week I think what we want to talk about is where does a wholesaler fit in today's used car business? 20 years ago, wholesalers were our main source of inventory. Mm-hmm. And it's changed. It's changed a lot in those last 20 years where O'Hara I probably buy 10 to 15 a month, on a good month from O'Hara. And then I probably buy another 20 or so from auctions. Mm-hmm. But he's still a main source of my cars and, helps me out a lot. So do you use wholesalers?
I once a month, twice a month, maybe we'll have a guy bring us something. But, my acquisition model is my business partner, brother-in-law. He is the wholesaler. He spends full time at the new car stores, hanging out, putting numbers on trades. So I think most of the wholesalers, since we've started doing that, have kind of shied away from us because they know that they're competing directly with us. My brother-in-law is the buyer. So tell me this, O'Hara, where does that fit in? I guess, what is the value add, or tell me why I should be using a wholesaler and not, I guess you don't need to sell yourself to us, but maybe tell me where that wholesaler fits in nowadays. Where do you see yourself building value in that supply chain, or, why does Luke buy 10 or 15 from you?
Well, with all the different mediums that you can use now to buy cars, where a wholesaler fits in is, we can get the product to you, straight from a dealer before anything's been done to it. Just like your brother-in-law gets you the trade straight there, what's wrong, it comes to you. Mm-hmm. We can, the value that we add, let's see, what am I?
Well, I can say this. The value O'Hara adds to me is I don't have to sit around a new car store, right?
Yep.
So he's like an extra employee for me. And we're more of a partnership. I think the value is the partnership that he adds to my business, that I don't have to do a 1099. I don't have to pay employee withholding taxes and all these things.
And that seems like a crucial piece right there when you say partnership, and maybe we can talk about that more later, but it seems like it definitely has to be a partnership, right? Because we've had wholesalers come by here in the past, and I know that they're just trying to dump their problem children on us because we don't have a relationship with them where if they can sneak one past us that's got issues, they're not going to see us again for 6 months and hope that we forgot about it, or they're fine burning bridges and relationships with us. But that relationship's crucial, right?
Well, it is, and it's crucial to me too. And I have a group of dealers that I sell to, probably, really a dozen that buy from me on a consistent basis. And when I'm buying something for Luke or for any of my other customers, I really know what they want. So I can buy it beforehand, or a lot of times I will call Luke and describe the car and get it to him. And we really don't have any problems. We don't have, arbitration coming back or whatever it is. The car is what it is. And if there's a problem with it, I either take it back or we fix it and we adjust the price and it's done. Just like you would do anywhere else. And I think that it is a lot easier way to buy cars than through the auction. The main problem with wholesaling, in my view, is getting the cars. The franchise dealers being willing to wholesale is the problem that we're facing, and all the new ways and technology that we have and avenues that they have to get rid of their cars, be it ACV auction or
Trade Rev.
Yeah, and Manheim has just surrounded the dealer completely with everything, and so it makes it a little harder for me to compete. with the auctions because of the floor plans and so on and so forth like that.
So let's go down that evolution, O'Hare. So when you started in the business, let's say in 01, and even when your dad was in the business, O'Hare, by the way, is a 3-generation type of dealer like I am. But let's talk about the evolution from the early 2000s to now, where I would assume in the early 2000s, you probably could have got as many cars as you needed all the time, right?
Right. And so when I first started with my dad, he had been in the wholesale business at that point for probably 15 or 16 years. And it worked. On Monday mornings, you went to the dealership and they'd hand you a box of keys to their preferred wholesaler. And my dad had a couple of stores that he worked. And so on Monday morning, they'd hand him a box of keys. He'd go out, make a list. He'd bring them back in. They'd negotiate, and there you went with your cars. And back then, even in the early 2000s, anything over 60, 70,000 miles, they wholesale. Dealers weren't keeping cars with 100,000 miles, 150,000 miles. They didn't. Wholesale wasn't really a source of profit, I don't think, for a dealership. And so it was something they didn't care about, so it was pushed to the side. And then, as we progressed on, it's become a whole different animal, especially as Manheim kind of started taking over the auction industry with the online bidding and all that kind of stuff. It changed everything. So whereas now a wholesaler could almost make a living off of 2 dealerships, back then, now you have to work 10 or 12 to get the same amount of cars.
And that's very interesting. Another thing that you could talk about as well, and I've seen the revolution of how to appraise a car.
Right.
Back in 2000, majority of wholesalers walked around with a black book in their pocket, right?
Right.
And sometimes you would know where to go with a certain car, and a dealer didn't know what a car was worth. How has that affected what you do?
Well, I mean, so whereas, like Luke said, we used a black book, now we use Manheim or other auction apps to scan in a vehicle. I still use black book, and I have and CARFAX. CARFAX has changed everything. So whereas you used to look at a car, if I'm buying a car for Luke, and I know that he is okay with a small CARFAX or a certain kind of CARFAX. Some dealers won't touch a car with a CARFAX. So being able to appraise the car, you have a lot of different avenues to kind of get your average and make sure you're putting it on the money.
That's interesting. I forgot. I didn't forget about the CARFAX, but back then you didn't know. You didn't know what you didn't know, and somebody could say, "Hey, this car's had an accident," but well,
yeah, you actually had to look for the paintwork.
That's right. We walked around with paint meters, right? Jeff, you know what a paint meter is?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do.
Oh, really? Okay. I know you.
I don't really care what the CARFAX says at my place. I hate CARFAX and AutoCheck.
Oh my gosh!
I've never pulled one. 10 years, 15 years, never pulled a CARFAX.
Really?
Wow. Never, man. I don't. Has it been in an accident? Yep, probably has. They got a clean CARFAX? I don't know. All I know is there's a lot of accidents that are not on CARFAX.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
That's the problem. Anyways, so tell me this. I mean, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate because I'm going to say, well, in those situations, you guys have a relationship, right? And it's not a formal relationship. You guys have a situation where O'Hare can bring you the cars he thinks you need, but he can also take cars to other people. And I guess that's the main rub that I have with wholesalers in general, and the issue as an outsider for a very, very long time. We would try to get cars from the new car store, but the used car manager wouldn't talk to you unless you were his high school buddy and he liked you. And so we had situations here with the new car store where the used car manager was dishing everything to his buddy, and he would send him everything, and that wholesaler would take him to the auction, or he'd wholesale him off. And I don't know if he was getting, money on the back end from this guy. Like it seems rot for,
that's what happened.
Yeah.
That was a main way of doing business 15, 20 years ago. I mean, and why wholesaling has gotten so difficult and why a lot of people have left the business.
Because of the dishonest ones, right?
Because that doesn't happen anymore. And so that once the owners caught wind that was going on, they kind of let it go to the side for years and years. But once they kind of got wind of that happening, that ended. I mean, and I go into stores, and I know a lot of the owners that I do business at the stores I do business with, and they know that I won't do that, number one, which is why I can stay in there. And, that is true. That was how it used to be. That was, and I'm sure some stores still do that.
Oh, yeah.
And some used car managers still do that. But there's so much turnover here in Columbia that we don't have that opportunity. And if you did that nowadays, you wouldn't be able to buy a car. This city, even though it's a medium-sized city, is just, you would be out of business if the word got out you did that.
If you're just dishing them off or taking back end, it's basically the best number wins.
Right.
And there's been so much consolidation within our city with bigger groups buying stores. You might would do that at one store. Next thing you know, it gets bought. Well, guess what? You're out.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's what I say that all the time. We might have an in at one store right now, but that can change on Monday morning when that dealer principal decides that he's going to send everything to auction. Or
how many times has that happened to you in the last year?
It's happened to me so many times. And, when I first started in 2006, is the first time I started doing it really myself. And then my dad retired in 2009. And I was completely on my own. And I used to get bent out of shape about a manager getting fired, and then you had to start all over, or this and that and the other. But at that point, I kind of decided to make myself more indispensable, I guess is the right word. And, I buy every kind of car. I buy an NOP that's going to go to a junkyard. I'll buy an NOP that needs a motor, transmission, lots of recon, or I'll buy frontline units too. So I kind of made myself that even when a dealership's slow, they definitely don't want their NOPs. And then when you're in there buying an NOP, they might say, well, I've got this one to look at, or I've got this frontline unit to look at. And I didn't pigeonhole myself into one dealership. So once I got out of that, I realized that there's still a lot of need for a wholesaler, and a lot of dealers still like to use them, even the young guys, because they don't know what the hell a car's worth at all. They use strictly a computer model. And so when they plug that VIN in, it tells them this is what Mannheim is, this is what NADA is, but it doesn't take into account all the other little nuances that we talk about can happen, whether it's got a bad transmission, motor, hail damage, blah, blah, blah.
And so I really see the value there in a wholesaler, and maybe that blurs the line between a wholesaler and having your own buyer, but you're on the ground there and you're looking at that car, and that same car might be on ACV or Trade Rev at 10 grand, but when you're sitting inside of it and you realize that there's a dead skunk in the back, that, there's some factor that you don't know.
Right.
The transmissions, it's hitting a little hard in third gear. And I know that in these cars, that means you've only got another month or two before it's done for.
Right.
That's something that only a wholesaler or a buyer who's in the car can tell you, right?
Right. And back to what you said before about, a wholesaler not giving you an opportunity at every car that they get. I think you were kind of getting at that point that, you might have a wholesaler bring you one or two cars. That's true. You don't want to be like somebody who sells somebody one car and you're just dumping your cars on them. With Luke, I do have to spread the love, but Luke, I don't have that many guys. I have 10 or 12, like I said, that are my main source, and I know what they want. And what Luke wants, customer X doesn't want. You know what I mean? So the stuff that I get that's coming to Luke, that's who it's going to go to. You see what I'm saying?
How does that work in a situation where Luke's buying something from you? If you rip a trade, does that get passed on to Luke, or do you just say, "Hey, Luke, I'm X amount above what I'm into it, so it's going to be $10,000 plus my $200 buy fee, or plus my $500," or is it just you guys negotiate on a number and Luke has no idea what you paid the dealer for it.
I don't care what you paid for it. Honestly, if I'm buying it for my number, I don't care.
Now, if I go into a dealership and I'm looking at 12 or 14 cars and I'm putting numbers on them and I call Luke and he gives me a number on it, I back up a couple $100 and it goes to Luke. If I buy a car over the phone and I get there and such is wrong with it or it's got this, and I'll call, if it's something that Luke put the number on, I'll call him and say, this is what it's going to be. We need to adjust. And yeah, if I bought a car and I stole it, the car's worth what it's worth. So it shouldn't matter. And it doesn't matter to me if somebody buys a car. If Luke bought a car and said, O'Hara, I don't want this car, I'll sell it to you for $6,000, and he had $3,000 in it, that's not my concern. My concern is whether I can make a couple hundred on my end. And I feel so. I've always been of the school that it doesn't matter how much money the other person's making, as long as everybody's making money.
It doesn't matter if he's $2,000 back a book or $2,000 over book. You know what book is, and you're going to buy it for your number.
There's so many people get caught up in what the other person makes.
I agree with that,
and you can't ever do that. It doesn't matter.
Especially in wholesaling.
If I made 500, I made 500. Okay. And if I sold to the next person and they made $2,000, I don't care. I offered the guy at that price, right? Yep. Now, if he had a secret sauce to getting rid of that car and made $2,000, that's great because that's good for him. He'll probably want to come back and buy more cars from me, right?
I think dealers, we get stuck in that mentality, especially when we have cars that we want to unload. We start looking at it and like, I can't dump that thing for $500 because you're going to see it a week later on Craigslist for $3,000. And you're going to be pissed that this guy just made $2,000 on you or something. You're like, why are you pissed? You wanted $500 out of it, and you got your number.
Right. That happens a lot. And the people that I do business with, they're not. Everybody is in the same boat. They want to. Everybody else. We're all in this business to make money, whether we're wholesaling or retailing or whatever. We're towing cars or whatever we're doing. Everybody's in it to make money. And there, in my mind, there's no reason to do business with somebody that doesn't want you to make $1.
Yeah. I tell you that one thing that O'Hara also developed an app that he's given several dealers, new car dealers and used car dealers that's pretty interesting. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So as you know, a couple of years ago, everything started going, everything in the future is moving towards app-based or online auctions or mobile auctions or whatever. So I had an idea to do an app. It's called Motor Quote, and we developed it, and you can use it just like your Manheim app. You can scan in a car, take a few pictures, a brief description, and then send it to me. And I can send it to my customers within, 30 seconds of it coming to me. And it was a way that, number one, the first thing was for me to save time and another one of those things is to keep me from being expendable at a dealership. I've got this other avenue where I can reach X amount of dealers in a short amount of time. And, it's been a benefit, especially when looking at a bunch of cars. I can send them really quick and get them to the people that need to see them.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting is it works great. He sends a lot of cars to me on that app. It allows me to have pictures. I can grab the VIN real quick and go to my appraisal tool. It's very innovative from his standpoint of using it to attract customers and also to help new car stores appraise cars. I think people kind of pigeonhole wholesalers to being that old guy that you talk about, hanging around a dealership and aggravating, the staff there, this, that, and the other. But wholesaling is a different animal. It's not what you think it was.
Right.
And
I'm in the car. I'm in the car business.
You are in the car business.
I move cars and I get them to dealers and get them to where they need to go. And it isn't a mom and pop thing anymore. It's a business. And when these guys at the dealership, they don't like I was going back to them not know what a car's worth because it's just everything's plug and play. When they send that car to me on the app, it just makes it easier, and I made it so everybody in the dealership could use it for free.
Oh yeah.
A lot of these apps that like Appraisal Lane or ACVs and auctions, that doesn't really count, but Appraisal Lane, there might be a couple others. I mean, you got to pay $500 a month plus a fee for every car and so on and so forth. Mine's free. I mean, any manager can use it. If somebody is confused on a car, they can send it to me and get a solid number so they don't make a big mistake.
So this is a regional thing, though. I mean, for your neighborhood, these are going to be used car managers, trade-in guys, salesmen that can upload a trade directly to you.
Correct.
They can get a number on that before they even do the deal. This doesn't have anything. This is not a national platform they can do. Or
it could be.
Yeah, I mean, it could be at some point in the future, and I think everything's going that way. I think, I don't know what the time frame is, but I mean, I would think within 10 years that most auctions are going to be online or mobile, and I think that most trade-ins will be done. This morning, I bought one car off the app, I bought two over the phone, and I bought two in person before 9:30 this morning.
My question for you is: Can an individual seller put their car on there and send it?
And that was another. I'm glad you brought that up because that was another reason that I developed it. Because CarFax and a lot of dealers, and Luke does it too. There's a lot of profit to be made in buying trades from individuals.
Oh yeah.
So I would like to market it more to that. Of course, it's mainly used for my wholesale business, and that's my main concern. And I'm not in the retail business. But if individuals, I have bought. I've only had the app for a year or so since last May, and I've maybe bought 12 cars from individuals. But if you could get that number up to, you
got to put money behind it and market it. Yeah,
right. Yeah. So that was part of the thinking process as well as the more and more cars get wholesaled in different ways at dealerships. And if I could pick up a few on the individual side, that would be a great thing.
Yeah. So Luke, tell me this. Sorry, go ahead, Luke.
I was thinking it has a lot of potential there that, all of us got to think about ways to grab some of those cars that CarFax is getting or that now Carvana's getting doing the same thing. Vroom's doing the same thing. So if we can steal some of that, it would help. It helps us.
Yeah, and like CarMax, when they buy a car, most of them go straight to their auction, or Vroom and Carvana, they go straight to Manheim auctions.
Yep.
I mean, they don't even mess with these cars, but they know that there's that margin of profit to add to whatever they're making on the other end, and there's still a lot of money there to be captured.
Another benefit of a wholesaler, and I was just thinking about this while we were talking, but if we have a mobile auctions, y'all have mobile auctions out there, Jeff?
Not in my region, but Vegas has a ton. Yeah.
But O'Hara buys from this one dealer group that also has a Manheim mobile auction, and I can't always make it there, or he's at another auction I can't make it to. I trust that O'Hara knows how to appraise a car. He knows what I'm looking for. He knows the issues I like to look for. So I can give O'Hara a number on a car. Well, I don't have to be at that auction to buy it.
Yeah.
I can look at the list, says, here's my list, buy these cars for me. Well, 2 weeks ago when I couldn't go to this auction, he bought 2-3 cars for me. Well, I'd pay him a buy fee, and, everybody's happy.
Right.
I cut Manheim out of $50 because I don't have to bid online, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, there's different ways you can use wholesalers that some people aren't thinking about. I don't need a buyer on staff, right? But if I've got a good relationship with a wholesaler, he can be my buyer, right?
Yeah, that's my question, Luke. That's what I wanted to ask you. And I know he's sitting next to you, so don't offend him because he's going to punch you. But why not just make an offer to O'Hara and say, hey, man, I want you full-time for me only?
I can't pay him what he makes.
Well, that's because he's ripping trades and keeping the difference. Now, if he was ripping trades for you and he was getting paid a salary to do that, now Godwin Motors is making that money. They're bringing trades in better. He's hunting for the exact cars you want in the exact places. So when does a buyer when does it become advantageous to no longer go to wholesalers, but to actually bring in an in-house full-time buyer? 50
I
cars,
think
30 cars, what?
I think you could do that. And there's people that have full-time buyers, wholesalers that work for their company, and I think that's fine. But
I think when you get to that 50 car volume, you do the numbers and say, okay, I'm paying X amount, $200, $300 a pop on a car. I guess the point where that's a full-time guy.
Well, how long is it going to take me to train that person, and how long is it going to take that person to develop the relationships that someone like this already has? Yep. Sure, could it be there for some dealers? Of course. If I was in a small town, I would probably do that because I would have that person working the dealers I already have relationships with. But
and I can add to that too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually thought about, and a time might come to where that might be what I do. Mm-hmm. So you can't replace. And one thing that I learned from my dad, and I worked for my dad for a long time, and I looked at a lot of cars before I ever bought one.
Oh yeah.
And I know within a couple of $100 what a car is worth. As soon as I don't even have to drive it down the street. I could drive it a couple hundred feet and I know what it's worth.
Yep.
And so I've thought about saying, in the future, if it has to be that way, to align myself with a dealer like Luke and my other customers and say, I will buy your cars for you, and there will be a buy fee and whatever it is, and whatever we get them for, that's what we get them for.
Yeah. And
if it comes to that, I think that that would be something that I'd be open to. And I don't blame any dealership for any idea they have or any. I mean, I think to keep moving forward is the natural progression of things. The old way as a wholesaling are over in my mind, and whatever you can do to make your company more profitable, you need to do it. And trying new things is part of that.
That's interesting. We have a synergy relationship where, I detail some of his cars. We work on some of his cars. He's just got into the transportation business. So, he's transporting some of my cars that need to be transported around certain areas.
Luke bought a car for me last week in Orlando or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So
I mean,
yeah. If I'm somewhere that he needs some help, I help him. If he's somewhere, it's a synergy relationship, and who knows? At some point, I think, all relationships can come together or go apart, or I can find something that helps his business. He can find something that helps my business. I think once you find the people you want to do business with, then you figure out how best to use those people, and that's what it's about. We've had wholesalers that really worked for Goblin Motors over the years or used our dealer license, and we charge them a fee per year to use our dealer's license and to use our insurance. So a per dealer tag type of situation. So I think there's always, if insurance gets out of hand for some people, then you might see, somebody move to that. I think just, in general, as car dealers over the years, we don't look at someone in our business as a symbiotic relationship. We don't look at that when it could be. Unfortunately, we always look at the dealer down the road as an adversary. And I don't think that's the right way to look at it in today's atmosphere.
No, I completely agree with that. We're all in it together, and everybody buys different cars. And sure, you're going to fight over a few cars with a couple dealers, but it very rarely would come to where one of my customers, Luke might say to me one day, he'd say, "Oh, I want that car. Don't lose it." That means I want the car. And that means if I buy it, it's coming to Luke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and he lets me know when that's the case. So, we're all doing this together.
But if you had one of your buyers say or one of your dealers say to you, "You know what? I just don't like Luke. If you sell him any more cars, I'm not buying from you anymore."
No, I'd tell him to, and I'd tell Luke the same thing.
Yeah.
I'd say, "Sorry,
stop crying.
We're not going to do that." And I developed over the years, and I learned it from my dad, and I'm thankful for it. That in this business, it's a difficult business because you get told no a lot and y'all do too. Don't get me wrong, but we get told no a lot more than we get told yes.
Yep.
And so you have to just smile, grin and bear it, go in there and do your job, which is to get rid of their iron and their stuff they don't want. You know, they don't care whether you're there tomorrow or the next day. You do the best thing you can do to be a good customer to them and to those franchise dealers and to Luke. And if I bring Luke a car and something's wrong with it and he calls me and tells me we fix it or we move on and I come pick it up.
And that's, you know, what's funny is used car dealers, independent used car dealers are a bunch of whiners. In case you didn't know that, Jeff. And, you know, you got to put on your big boy pants a lot of times because O'Hara's going to sell me a car every once in a while that it sucks, right? It's just a bad car. He didn't know that. He drove it 200 yards and he made $300. Or he drove it 2 miles and it didn't act up and he made $300. Should I go back to him and say, hey, I need a $2,000 adjustment because the transmission went out on it last week? No, that's not the way it works. You know, so there's both sides of that. If you trust him, if you trusted that he didn't know anything was wrong with it, and you got to go with it. You got to put it on your big boy pants.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the key to that relationship is, you know, that, you know, the aggregate sum is that he's bringing me good stuff. I mean, if 1 out of every 2 is a bomb, that's not good. 1 out of every 10, you know, that's just being human and unfortunately used cars. So tell me this.
It's more like 1 out of 50, you know, that something.
Yeah.
Hopefully less than that. That are blindsided, that is. You might buy some projects, but at least you knew about them.
That's right. You're going to miss some stuff every now and then. I mean, I missed a completely busted tail light and a busted bumper the other day. I mean, I don't even know how it happened, but you just sometimes you walk around them and you just don't see it.
Go car blind. Yeah. Well, O'Hare, give us some tips for those that are listening, dealers that are maybe they're buying themselves, maybe we got wholesalers that are listening. Maybe we've got dealer buyers that are listening. What are some tips that you could share with them from your lifetime experience that would make their wholesaling better? You know, how can they get better inventory? How can they source better, faster? What are some of the avenues they should be looking at? New car stores, small auctions, fleet, lease, other dealers that, you know, maybe they're higher in the food chain or lower in the food chain. Like maybe some tips that you've found that would be practical for everybody.
Well, I mean, I would recommend that every small car lot, whether they sell $1,000 buy here, pay here cars, or they sell $20,000 buy here, pay here, or they're a franchise dealer, to use a wholesaler in some fashion. And I think in today's environment, you use a wholesaler, you use your online tools, your ACV auctions, use your Manheim auctions and your local auctions. You combine all of those things, and I use all of those things. I buy cars from small auctions, Manheim auctions. I buy cars off of ACV, which is a huge competitor. I wouldn't call me a competitor of theirs, but we compete for the same cars right now. But I use them as a tool because it's a great idea. So I think you have to leave yourself open to every option. And have a good wholesaler, have a good auction that you like to use, and use the same ones over and over again, because it is you get to know the people there, you get to know what to expect. It's
all about relationships, just what you just said. I mean, if you don't use all these pieces of this puzzle, you're missing a lot of cars. You're missing great relationships, and you're pigeonholing yourself. You're not learning. And if you do have an issue with a car that you bought from you see this all the time. Well, I bought this car from Manheim and it didn't go through arbitration, this, that, and the other. Well, how many cars you buy from Manheim, right?
Yeah.
You know, that stuff does matter. As much as we want to not think it matters, it does matter. And so if I only bought one car from O'Hare last year and I bought another one and it was bad, well, he's gonna be like, well, you only bought one car a year from me. You know, I'm sorry it broke, 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
But if I bought a car from Manheim and I'm buying 40 cars a month, well, they're going to probably help me out if I need something, right? So it's all about relationships.
I had a dealer call me this morning. I had 2 different things happen. One was an in-op car that I had to get back that went to a parts dealer, and they had already sold the bumper and the hood and the fender. So I said, well, find a bumper and a hood and a fender and put it on there, and I'm gonna take it back. And, so that I'm out $1,000 right there. But it keeps everybody happy. And then another dealer called me this morning and said that that one of the cars that I sold him about a month ago, that he had to do $1,200 worth of work, and so on and so forth. I said, well, you let me know what I need to do to make it right, and I'll make it right. And that's the way that we handle it. But everybody, has a different way of doing it. But
I just like to rib him every once in a while when I get one. I was like, that dang car that I bought from you, and then he'll be like, well, how about that one you made $5,000 on? I'll be like, oh, you're right.
So, and I do that with a lot of my guys. I have a guy that's not far from here, and he's a buy here, pay here guy, and he'll complain every now and then. And I said, well, that makes up for the $500,000 you've made on me over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I didn't ask for anything on the back end of that. Huh?
Right.
He doesn't get any F&I on the back end of his. Right?
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, O'Hare. I really appreciate your time, Luke. I don't know if you've got any other questions for him or follow-up info we need from this, but man, I mean, it really has been great. And I think the theme of it, like you guys said, it's just relationships, Sure. Have a relationship with your source, whether that's digital or, ideally you've got a wholesaler that's actually checking these things out. And for me as a buy here, pay here dealer, man, I cringe every time I buy something online and I haven't seen it or had someone I trust see it. So
right.
Wholesalers are crucial, man. Crucial to have somebody in the car looking at it, making sure it is what it looks like or what they say it is,
For sure, man. Thanks, O'Hare. We appreciate you having me.
All right. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, guys.